Human space had been silent for so long that even the most ancient civilizations began treating it like an old ghost story, something parents used to scare their children but no adult truly believed anymore. Hundreds of years passed without a single human transmission, no patrol ships, no outposts, no trade calls, nothing. The last recorded sighting of a human vessel had been nearly 2 centuries ago, and even that was described by witnesses as a shadow moving through stars, a description so vague that scholars dismissed it. But in the galaxy, silence was dangerous. Silence meant planning. Silence meant someone was preparing for something they did not want anyone else to know. Silence meant threat. Yet the Dravik Empire believed they were beyond threat. They controlled 43 star systems, an armada of fearsome warships, and a military so ruthless that entire species fled the moment they detected a Dravik signal. Their emperor wanted one thing: proof that human space was truly empty, unguarded, and forgotten. So he ordered Commander Zarlok, a proud and fearless warrior with 4 crimson medals across his chest, to enter the forbidden region known as the Human Outer Zone. Zarlok felt no hesitation. He believed every rumor about humans was exaggerated, blown out of proportion by frightened creatures who had never seen a real war. Myths, he had muttered before departure. Old stories from weaker species. He didn't believe for a moment that a race that hid for 200 years could pose any threat to Dravik steel. Now, as his enormous battleship glided toward the invisible border, he stood at the command deck with a confident smirk. Around him, the crew whispered anxiously, some refusing to look out the windows. The space ahead looked normal, empty stars, drifting dust, a dark calm that stretched endlessly. Nothing dangerous. Nothing living. Nothing human. Zarlok tapped his claw on the armrest. "Forward," he ordered. "Let's end this story once and for all." The ship moved, engines humming deep inside its metallic bones. Then it happened. The moment they crossed the boundary, an unseen line floating in space, the entire ship shuddered like a living creature struck by fear. Every light flickered violently. Every console dimmed. The engine hum flattened into a soft dying sigh. And suddenly, silence. Not just silence of sound. Silence of systems. Silence of energy. Silence of life. The battleship floated without power, a massive beast whose heart had just stopped beating. "Report." Zarlok barked. But no one answered. Officers slammed buttons, hit screens, pulled levers, but every system was frozen like time itself had been locked. The stars outside began to distort, bending and twisting as if space was melting. Some stars stretched into thin glowing lines. Others spiraled like water swirling down a drain. One officer pointed with trembling fingers. "Sir, the readings show." The rest of his words died in his throat. A sudden, cold communication signal flashed on the main screen. It wasn't Dravik. It wasn't any known empire. It was unmistakably human, sharp, metallic, built with perfect precision. And the voice that followed was even colder. "Unauthorized entry detected. Turn back immediately." The crew froze. Zarlok felt something he had not felt since childhood: fear. But he pushed it aside. "Ignore it. Press forward," he shouted. "They are bluffing." But the crew looked unsure. No one had expected a warning. No one had expected anything alive. No one had expected humans. As they drifted deeper, the ship lights flickered again, like something enormous had passed by their hull, brushing against the metal with invisible fingers. The crew could feel it, a presence, an intelligence far more advanced than any system they had encountered. Something was watching them. Something old. Something human. Suddenly, a gravitational distortion tore open in front of them, like space ripping apart from the inside. Light swirled into a funnel, shadows stretched across the void, and from this rift emerged a colossal shape. A warship. But not like any warship ever seen in the galaxy. Its hull was black as a starless night. No windows, no engines, no visible weapon ports. Its surface gleamed smoothly, almost like liquid metal. It radiated no heat. It had no traditional energy signature. It was the kind of object scanners shouldn't detect, but everyone felt its presence. The Silent Horizon. A name whispered only in forbidden human archives. A ship built not to defend humanity, but to punish anyone reckless enough to breach their space. What "What is that thing?" an officer whispered, voice cracking. Zarlok's throat tightened. He couldn't speak. The ship in front of him didn't look built, it looked grown, shaped from darkness itself. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. Something beyond understanding. The human message returned, slower this time. Deadlier. Turn. Back. The words felt like they scraped into every mind on the ship, cold and emotionless. Zarlok clenched his jaw. He wasn't ready to surrender. "Charge weapons," he ordered, his voice trembling slightly. "Prepare to fire." But the ship did not obey. The screens flashed red. Weapon systems offline. Engine control offline. Navigation offline. Communications compromised. The crew stared in horror. They were prisoners inside their own ship. Zarlok tried to shout another order, but a sudden force hit the ship. No explosion, no sound. Just pressure. As if the universe itself pressed its hand against their hull. Everyone felt it in their bones. The human ship didn't move. It didn't glow. It didn't threaten. It simply existed, and that existence alone crushed the Dravik fleet's courage. Zarlok watched helplessly as the silent horizon rotated slightly, revealing massive panels along its sides. They unfolded silently, like wings unfurling. But instead of feathers, they carried thousands of small hexagonal plates that shimmered with white-blue energy. A living shield. A living weapon. A living warning. Zarlok felt his legs weaken. This cannot be human," he whispered. But deep inside, he knew the truth. Humans didn't disappear. Humans didn't hide. Humans didn't run. They prepared. For centuries. Quietly. Patiently. And now the galaxy had stepped into their space, uninvited. The stars around them continued to warp. The ship's gravity fluctuated. Their sensors detected nothing. The air inside the vessel grew cold. A cold that felt intelligent. The screen flashed again. This time, not a warning. A message. A final one. "You were warned." Then the silent horizon emitted a deep, vibrating hum. No explosion, no attack, just a hum that resonated with the ship's structure. The Dravik vessel creaked. Panels popped. Lights exploded. Officers fell to the floor holding their heads, screaming as the sound pierced through their minds like a psychic blade. Zarlok could barely breathe. He had heard tales of human technology, but he thought they were myths. Now he realized something terrifying. Humans didn't build weapons to fight. They built weapons to end. The silent horizon slowly drifted closer, its dark hull reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. It felt like a predator quietly examining its prey. Then, for the first time, the ship emitted a different signal. Not mechanical. Not cold. A heartbeat. A human heartbeat, echoing through the Dravik ship's metal walls. Every crew member froze. The heartbeat grew louder. Stronger. Closer. Zarlok felt his chest tighten, as if invisible hands wrapped around his lungs. His mind screamed, this wasn't technology. This was something far beyond machines. Something alive. Something sentient. Something human. And as the heartbeat reached its peak, a final voice, calm, controlled, terrifyingly human, echoed across every screen, "You should not have come here." Zarlok finally understood. Human space was never empty. It was waiting. Watching. Preparing. And the Dravik Empire had just awakened something that should have been left alone forever. The Dravik battleship drifted helplessly inside the human outer zone, but inside the cold metal walls, fear had already started eating the crew alive. The silent horizon floated only a short distance away, silent like a sleeping monster, but everyone aboard Zarlok's ship felt as if a pair of invisible human eyes were studying them, remembering them, judging them. Even the oxygen felt heavier, as if the air itself didn't want them there. Officers whispered to each other in cracked voices, their hands shaking over dead consoles. Some tried rerouting power, others tried rebooting navigation, but the ship remained frozen like a corpse drifting through a nightmare. No one dared speak loudly. No one dared breathe too fast. The presence of the human ship felt like a hand pressed against every throat, reminding them that their lives were not their own anymore. Zarlok stood stiffly at the command center, gripping the edge of the console so tightly his claws cut into the metal. The terrified faces of his crew reflected on the dark screen in front of him. We must try to communicate," he said, though his voice betrayed the storm inside him. "Humans value reason. They value diplomacy." But no one believed that. Not anymore. Diplomacy belonged to living species. Humans felt ancient, more like a force of nature than a civilization. A young officer, barely past training, stepped forward. His eyes were wide, his voice trembling. "Sir, if humans were peaceful, they would have replied kindly. They warned us twice. They disabled our ship. The officer's voice cracked as he stared at the silent black warship outside. "They don't want peace. They want us gone." Zarlok snapped, partly out of fear, partly out of desperation. "Then we will show them Dravik's strength." He slammed his hand onto the control panel. Nothing happened. No power. No weapons. No engines. His own ship ignored him, as if mocking him. As if reminding him that this was not his territory, not his space, not his fight. Another officer whispered, "Sir, they took control of the ship. We are not flying it anymore." Zarlok's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Commander," the officer swallowed hard, "something inside that human ship is piloting us." Before Zarlok could respond, every screen across the command deck flickered violently. Symbols began flashing, unknown symbols, spiraling patterns, coded lines no Dravik system could decipher. The patterns were hypnotic, eerie, almost alive, shifting like they were reading the crew's thoughts. Then a human voice, calm, emotionless, filled every room. "You entered restricted space." The crew froze. The voice had no anger, no frustration, no feeling at all. It was dead calm. Dead cold. "You were warned." The screens switched again, showing their own ship from the outside, like a god was holding a camera in space. It showed them powerless, trapped in darkness, dwarfed by the terrifying presence of the silent horizon. The voice returned, "Further resistance will result in consequences." Zarlok felt something heavy settle in his chest. This wasn't a threat. This was a promise. But then something unexpected happened, something no one aboard the Dravik ship ever imagined they would hear. The voice softened, just a little. "You are afraid." Those 3 words hit the crew harder than any weapon blast. Their fear was visible, yes, but hearing the humans acknowledge it, almost study it, was something else. It was intimate, personal, terrifying. The voice continued. "Fear is natural. It means you understand what you have done." The youngest officer broke down, falling to his knees. Please let us go." Zarlok turned sharply, rage covering his own terror. "Stand up. You are Dravik. Show spine." But the boy shook violently, tears spilling down his face. "Sir, this is not war, this is not even battle, this is death waiting in silence, this is something we don't understand." Zarlok opened his mouth to shout, but found he had no strength left. Because deep inside, he agreed with the boy. This wasn't an enemy. This wasn't something they could overpower or intimidate. Humans were not waiting to fight. Humans were waiting to judge. And they had already begun. Suddenly, every wall inside the ship vibrated with a dull thumping sound. Slow. Rhythmic. Deep. The heartbeat again. But this time, louder. Closer. Stronger. It echoed through their bones, inside their skulls, inside their thoughts. It didn't feel like a machine. It felt alive. It felt human. The Dravik crew looked around in horror. One officer whispered, "Why do we hear a heartbeat?" "Ships don't have heartbeats," another answered in a broken voice. Maybe the ship is a heart." Zarlok felt sweat dripping down his neck. "We must show strength," he whispered, though he didn't believe it. "Humans respect strength. Humans respect boundaries," a deep voice suddenly replied. Every head snapped upward. The voice wasn't from a speaker. It was inside their minds. "You crossed ours." One officer screamed, covering his ears. Another collapsed on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The mental intrusion was gentle, but unstoppable. It wasn't pain. It was presence. A human presence. And it felt old. It felt powerful. It felt disappointed. Zarlok gritted his teeth. "State your identity." The voice answered instantly. "We are sentinels. Guardians of human space. Protectors of a silence we earned through blood." Zarlok felt a chill. Not one sentinel. Not an individual. We. Plural. Multiple. Countless. Watching. Listening. The voice continued. "Humanity has no interest in war. But we do not allow trespass." The tone darkened, gaining a hint of something sharp beneath the calm. Not anger. Not rage. Something even more dangerous. Purpose. "Leave now." Zarlok trembled. We cannot move. We know." The voice softened even more, and that softness was worse than cruelty. "We disabled your systems. For your safety." The irony was brutal. But then, the voice changed again. The cold machine-like precision vanished. And something deeply human, something emotional, entered the voice. "You do not understand what lies deeper inside human space," it whispered. "It is not safe even for us." The crew stared at each other, confused. Not safe for humans. What could that mean? The voice continued, almost mournful. "We protect this border because beyond it, there are things no species should ever disturb." Zarlok felt his heart squeeze. Things, like what? A pause. A long, heavy, painful pause. Then, things humanity buried. The Dravik crew shivered. The voice grew softer. Things that should remain buried. For the first time, the human voice sounded emotional. Sad. Haunted. The silent horizon turned slightly outside, and as it did, the stars behind it bent again. The crew realized something terrible. The human ship wasn't creating the distortion. It was holding the distortion back. Holding something inside. Something far worse. Zarlok whispered, "Why warn us? Why not destroy us like legends say?" The human voice replied immediately, "Because destruction is mercy for those who know too much." The room fell into terrified silence. Then the human voice delivered a final message, slow and cold: "Choose fear. Choose wisdom. Choose to leave." The screens went dark. The heartbeat stopped. The presence vanished. The silent horizon drifted backward slightly, giving them room to escape, room to survive. But their ship still didn't move. Not until the humans allowed it. Zarlok looked at his crew. All broken. All terrified. All waiting for him. His voice cracked as he finally said the words no Dravik commander had spoken in centuries: "Prepare retreat." And the moment he spoke them, the engines roared back to life on their own. Not by their command. By permission. Permission from humans. Permission to live. They were being spared. Not because humans were merciful, but because humans were warning them. Turn back. Never return. And pray you never learn what lies deeper inside human space. The Dravik battleship slowly regained power, but no one cheered, no one smiled, no one felt relief. The lights flickered back on like the ship was waking from a nightmare, yet every officer stood frozen, afraid that even a single breath too loud might provoke the human presence still hovering around them. Zarlok could feel the engines vibrating beneath the floor again, but this vibration didn't feel like victory. It felt like the trembling heartbeat of prey that the predator allowed to escape. The silent horizon remained still outside, floating like a silent judge, but something about it felt different now. It wasn't just observing them. It was waiting. Watching their next decision. Almost testing them. Zarlok's claws curled tightly against the metal rail. His heart hammered inside his chest. He wanted to act strong. He wanted to show his crew courage. But deep inside, something soft and painful pulsed through him: shame. For the first time in his career, he had no idea what to do. The ship AI reported gently, almost too gently, "All systems online. Course ready for retreat." Retreat. The word stabbed him. He had been chosen to prove human weakness. He had been chosen to show the galaxy that Dravik dominance was unquestionable. And now he was being forced to run. But as he stared at the screen showing the dark human dreadnought, the shame inside him twisted into something else: fear so deep and ancient it shook his bones. He finally understood. Human space was not empty. Human silence was not weakness. Human disappearance was not surrender. It was warning. A warning the Dravik Empire had ignored. Set course for departure, Zarlok murmured. His voice barely reached his own ears. Officers hurried, thankful, their hands shaking as they typed commands. But before the engines could fire, every console blinked again. Not disabled. Not hacked. Just diverted. A new notification glowed on all screens. Incoming transmission. The crew's blood ran cold. Zarlok swallowed hard. Put it through. Every screen flashed white. Then an image appeared, not of a person, not of a human officer, not of a face at all. It was a corridor. A corridor inside their own ship. The crew gasped. The corridor was empty, but the lights flickered as if something unseen moved through it. The temperature reading on the corner dropped rapidly. -10 degrees C, -18 degrees C, -31 degrees C. Breath-catching cold. The officers stared, horrified. That's Section 12B, someone whispered. There's no one there. There shouldn't be anything there. Zarlok felt a chill crawl up his spine. The camera suddenly jerked, as if wind pushed it, even though there should be no wind in a sealed corridor. Then, a shadow crossed the frame. Not a shape. Not a person. A shadow with no source. The crew screamed. Zarlok froze. What is that? The shadow drifted like smoke, but its movements were too controlled, too intentional. It stretched along the walls, crawling like a living thing, then disappeared around a corner. Another camera feed activated automatically. Then another. Then another. The shadow moved through all of them, passing silently through their ship, exploring their hallways, touching their controls, drifting past terrified crew members who collapsed to their knees. A quiet whisper filled the speakers. Not words. Not language. Just breath. Human breath. Heavy. Calm. Close. Too close. One officer covered his ears, sobbing. They're inside the ship. They're inside. Zarlok slammed his hand on the console. Enough. Show yourself. The whisper stopped. Then a single soft, chilling phrase echoed through every speaker, every wall, every bone. We already have. The lights dimmed. The air thickened. The Dravik crew felt something moving through them, through their minds, like a cold hand searching their memories. Someone screamed, dropping their weapon. Another officer began shaking violently, his voice breaking as he whispered, "They're reading us. They're reading everything." Zarlok felt the presence too. A touch. Not painful. Just observant. Curious. Human curiosity. The kind that didn't need physical form. Then the screens all switched to a new image. Space. The border of human territory. But this time, from another angle. Another ship's view. Zarlok's breath caught in his throat. It was their own ship. The Dravik battleship was shown from the outside, but the angle wasn't from the silent horizon. No. It was from behind them. Something was there. Something they hadn't detected. Something larger. The camera zoomed out more, and more, and more. A silhouette appeared behind their battleship. A silhouette so massive it blocked dozens of stars. A ship 10 times larger than their own. Silent. Black. Motionless. Impossible, an officer whispered. That's another human ship. How did we not see it? How? They hide by choice, the human voice interrupted. This time the voice felt stronger, like the presence had stepped closer. If we wished, none of you would have reached this border alive. The enormous ship behind them shifted slightly. Not aggressively. Just enough to show its size. Enough to show they had been trapped between two predators this entire time. The silent horizon in front of them. A second colossus behind them. A cage made of silence. A trap made of technology beyond imagination. Zarlok's breath came in short, sharp bursts. Why show us this now? The human voice replied, softer than before, almost emotional. Because knowledge is heavier than death. You must understand the weight of your mistake before we let you leave. The image changed again. This time showing deep inside human space. A fog-like darkness covered everything. No stars. No light. No movement. The voice whispered, "This region is forbidden. Even for us. This darkness was born in war long before your species learned to walk." Then the screen zoomed deeper. Into the dark fog. Into something ancient. Something mechanical. Something alive. A massive silhouette stretched across the void, so big it looked like a floating mountain. Its surface cracked. Its body half fused with unnatural energy. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature. It was something in between. Something wounded. Something sleeping. Something dangerous. The crew felt their souls shrink. Zarlok whispered, What is that?" The voice answered slowly. "A relic of humanity's oldest sin." The shadowy relic shifted slightly, like it sensed their gaze even from afar. "We sealed it away. We guard it. We keep the galaxy safe from what remains of our past." The voice grew darker. "But if your empires invade too deeply, if they cross too far, they will wake it." A cold silence stretched across the room. The crew felt ice in their bones. The giant wounded relic pulsed faintly, once, like a heartbeat echoing across centuries. The human voice returned, close enough to feel like it whispered inside Zarlok's ear. "Leave now." The relic pulsed again, stronger this time. "And tell your empire one truth." A deep pause. The Dravik crew held their breath. "Humanity is not your enemy." Another pulse. "But what lies behind us?" The screens went black. "Is everyone's enemy." The power in the Dravik ship surged violently, engines roaring. A force, gentle but unbreakable, pushed them forward, like a giant hand guiding them away from the border. The silent horizon drifted backward, giving them space. The massive second ship behind them vanished like smoke. Zarlok felt tears in his eyes, not from weakness, but from understanding. They hadn't been spared out of kindness. They had been spared because humans were protecting something far worse than any empire. Something chained. Something old. Something waiting. And as their ship was pushed out of human space, Zarlok whispered the words that would soon shake his entire empire: humans were never the threat. They were the shield. The Dravik battleship moved slowly away from the border of human space, but the fear inside it did not move with it. It stayed, heavy like a chain wrapped around every soldier's heart. The engines hummed, the lights glowed, the ship lived again, yet the crew felt as if something inside them had died, their confidence, their pride, their belief in Dravik's superiority. Zarlok stood silently at the command deck, his eyes fixed on the dark space behind them where the silent horizon still floated like a giant shadow made of nightmares. The dreadnought did not give chase. It did not threaten. It simply watched. Watching them retreat. Watching their humiliation. Watching their understanding grow. Some officers wiped tears from their eyes, pretending it was sweat. Others whispered prayers they had not spoken since childhood. The youngest officer, the one who had cried earlier, stared out the window with trembling hands. "Sir," he whispered, voice barely a breath, will they follow us?" Zarlok didn't answer. He wasn't sure. Humans didn't act like any empire. They didn't seek trophies, territory, or surrender. They simply protected their silence with terrifying precision. The ship's console suddenly flickered again. Not violently this time. Softly, gently, as if touched by a careful hand. A message appeared on every screen, glowing in pale blue letters. "You have not left." The entire crew froze. A cold wave washed over the room. "What does that mean?" someone whispered. Zarlok's claws dug into the console. "Check our position." The navigation officer scanned frantically, then paled. "Commander, we are still inside human outer zone." The crew gasped. No matter how far they traveled, no matter how fast the engines pushed them forward, they had not moved at all. They were still in the same spot. As if human space itself refused to release them. As if the universe around them had shifted to cage them. The console vibrated with a soft hum. Another message appeared. "You cannot leave if you do not understand." Zarlok exhaled slowly. Understand what? The lights dimmed. Every speaker crackled with low static, then a voice appeared, not the cold warning voice from before. This one sounded old. Deeper. Human, yes, but carrying something heavier, regret. The voice spoke with pain beneath every syllable. You witnessed the relic. You saw what sleeps in the dark. The screens turned on again, showing the same ancient wounded giant, the thing sealed deep within human space. The creature-like machine pulsed faintly, its massive body floating in endless darkness. Zarlok felt a chill run down his spine. Why show it to us again? The voice responded slowly, each word sinking into their minds. Because you do not understand what that relic represents. The image zoomed closer. Cracks in its metallic flesh glowed with faint golden light, like wounds filled with burning memories. This is a remnant of our oldest war. A war we never speak of. A war we lost, and survived only by sacrifice that cannot be spoken aloud. The voice trembled, not with fear, but with ancient grief. We do not guard human space to protect ourselves from the galaxy. A pause. We guard the galaxy from what remains of us. The crew felt their hearts tighten. Every story they had heard about humans, their power, their silence, their disappearance, suddenly twisted into something deeper. Something tragic. Zarlok whispered, barely able to breathe, "You mean, humans didn't vanish because they were weak?" The voice echoed softly. "We vanished because we were too strong." The screens flickered again, showing battlefields from old wars, ruined planets, shattered moons, burning skies. Faint silhouettes of monstrous machines and humanoid warriors clashed in shadows too bright and too dark at the same time. The images felt ancient, like memories carved from old scars. The voice grew heavier. Humanity fought the relics. We survived. But survival came with a price. The images shifted to human faces, tired, wounded, broken, but standing with unwavering eyes. Zarlok felt something he had never felt for humans before: respect. Not fear. Respect. The voice continued. Our silence is not isolation. The silent horizon appeared again on screen, hovering behind them. It is responsibility. Suddenly, the crew understood something terrifying. Humans were not sleeping giants. Humans were guardians of something so powerful, so dangerous, that they sacrificed their presence, their expansion, their voice, just to keep the galaxy safe. Zarlok felt tears he didn't know he could shed. We judged you wrong," he whispered. "We thought you disappeared out of cowardice." The voice answered with sadness. Cowardice would have been easier. The screens darkened again, leaving only the silent horizon visible outside their windows. A low hum filled the ship, the same heartbeat-like sound, but softer now. Almost comforting. "You will leave now," the voice said. "We delayed your departure so understanding could replace arrogance." Zarlok nodded slowly. We understand." "Good." The voice softened. "Because if your empire enters again, we will not stop you with warnings." The silent horizon turned away. The crew held their breath. "The relics will wake." The voice faded. "And we will not be able to save you." Suddenly, the stars around them snapped back into alignment. Their ship lurched forward as if released from an invisible grip. The engines roared. Navigation lit green. They were free. Finally free. But Zarlok felt no relief. No joy. Only a weight in his heart, a weight humanity had carried alone for centuries. The youngest officer whispered, "Sir, what will we tell the Emperor?" Zarlok stared at human space shrinking behind them, darkness swallowing the threat and the silence once again. In a trembling voice filled with emotion, he whispered, "We will tell him the truth." The crew leaned in. Zarlok closed his eyes. Humans are not hiding. A pause. They are protecting us from something we are not ready to face. As their ship sped away, the silent horizon watched silently, until it vanished into the darkness like a ghost returning to its grave. And for the first time in his life, Zarlok hoped, truly hoped, that his empire would listen. The Dravik battleship shot through space like a wounded animal fleeing a forest fire, engines burning hotter than they ever had before. But no one aboard felt saved. No one felt rescued. Everyone carried the weight of what they had seen, what they had heard, what had been revealed to them. The silence inside the ship felt unbearable. Not peaceful, heavy, like invisible hands pressed on every shoulder, reminding them they had witnessed something the galaxy was never supposed to see. Zarlok stood at the front of the command deck, staring into the shrinking distance where human space faded behind them like a dark wound closing back into the universe. But even from afar, he felt watched, felt judged, felt small. The youngest officer approached him slowly, voice trembling. "Sir, we are accelerating too fast. The engines are overheating. We must reduce speed." Zarlok didn't move. His eyes were fixed on that dark region behind them. "No," he whispered. "We slow down when we are safe. And we are not safe yet." The officer swallowed. "But sir, the humans let us go. They aren't following us anymore." Zarlok finally turned. His eyes held something no Dravik officer had seen in him before, fear mixed with sorrow. "Child, do you still not understand?" The officer shook his head. Zarlok stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The humans are not the danger." The officer froze. Zarlok looked back at the dark void. "The relics are." The crew shifted uneasily, remembering the monstrous silhouette sealed deep within human space, the colossal wounded being that pulsed like a dying star, radiating ancient rage and unbearable sadness. The Dravik officers whispered among themselves. Why keep such a thing alive? Why not destroy it? How did they even fight it? But one question weighed heavier than all others: what if it wakes? Zarlok's eyes darkened at that thought. "If it wakes," he said softly, "the galaxy will burn before it even understands what killed it." The room fell silent again. A soft alarm beeped. "Commander," the navigator said quietly, "we have resumed normal space. Human interference no longer affects our systems." Zarlok nodded, though the relief was hollow. "Send a message to the Emperor," he ordered. "Tell him we must call an emergency council." The communications officer began typing, but suddenly the lights flickered again. A cold chill spread through the command deck. The officer froze. "Commander, the message, it's not sending." Zarlok's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" The officer swallowed hard. "It's not being blocked, it's being returned. Our own system is sending it back." Everyone looked at each other in growing fear. "It's like something is checking our message," another officer whispered. "Reading it." Zarlok felt ice in his spine. Humans. Before anyone could respond, every console in the room flickered to life again, glowing with soft, pale blue light. The crew gasped. Zarlok stepped back. The human voice returned, calm, quiet, and impossibly close. "We are not intercepting your message." The entire crew froze. The voice continued. "We are making sure your empire listens." Zarlok whispered shakily, "WY, are you still here? You let us go." The voice softened, almost gentle. "We let you leave. But we did not let you forget." Every console screen changed. A new image appeared, a devastated world. Burned mountains. Oceans boiled dry. Skies cracked with fire. The crew flinched, some covering their eyes. "This," the human voice said slowly, "was the first world destroyed in the Relic War." Another image replaced it, a giant metallic creature, similar to but different from the relic they had seen earlier. This one was active. Alive. Terrifying. "This," the voice said, "was the first relic awakened." Zarlok's heart pounded in his chest. "How did you survive such things?" The voice paused. The silence that followed felt sacred, heavy with the weight of old grief. "We survived," the voice said finally, "because we did what no one else could." The screens showed tiny human ships, so small, so fragile compared to the relics, flying straight into the jaws of impossible monsters. The crew watched in stunned silence as humans sacrificed themselves again and again, lighting the sky with burning bravery. The voice cracked slightly, like remembering hurt. "We used every weapon, every invention, every life. Our victory was not triumph." A deep, aching pause. It was loss. The screens faded. The silent horizon flashed briefly in the distance before disappearing again. "Why show us this?" Zarlok whispered, voice raw. "Why burden us with your pain?" The human voice spoke quietly. Because your empire stands on the edge of the same mistake that once destroyed ours. Zarlok felt his breath catch. And what mistake is that? The voice's answer was immediate. Arrogance. The room fell silent as the shock struck every soul. The voice continued. You entered our space believing humans had grown weak. That our silence made us vulnerable. A sharper tone entered the voice. Not anger, truth. Our silence is the shield the galaxy hides behind. Zarlok lowered his head. For once, he felt ashamed of everything he had believed. What must we do? He whispered. The voice softened to something almost compassionate. Tell your empire the truth. Zarlok nodded, but the voice wasn't done. And warn them of this. The screens lit bright red. A final message appeared, if they enter again. We will not be the ones who respond. The threat was not from humans. It was from what lay behind them. Zarlok stared at the message, breath shaking. Will you protect us if something goes wrong? He asked softly. The human voice answered with heartbreaking honesty, we will try. A pause. But we might fail. That sentence crushed the crew worse than any weapon could. If humans, creatures of impossible resolve, feared failure, then the galaxy had no hope against the relics alone. The voice faded. Go now. And be wise. The consoles returned to normal. The presence vanished. Human space shrank in the distance like a closing eye. Zarlok stood silently for a long time before he finally whispered, we thought humans disappeared. He closed his trembling eyes. But the truth is, they remained so the rest of us could live. For the first time in Dravik history, a commander prayed for another species. He prayed humans would stay strong. Because the galaxy needed them. Needed their silence. Needed their shield. And feared the day that silence might break. The Dravik battleship finally crossed the last invisible ripple of human outer zone, but even then, no one aboard dared to breathe with relief. It felt like leaving a graveyard that still had open eyes watching them walk away. The moment their systems were completely free from human interference, the stars brightened around them, the engines steadied, and normal space returned. But nothing about the crew felt normal anymore. Every officer looked drained, hollow, like someone had reached inside them and pulled out every ounce of arrogance they once carried. Zarlok stood silent at the center of the command deck, staring at a screen that no longer showed the silent horizon. Human space behind them looked exactly as it had before, quiet, empty, peaceful. But now he knew better. That silence was not calm. It was chained thunder. It was a sleeping monster's heartbeat. It was a cage built to protect the galaxy from echoes of humanity's darkest war. The youngest officer approached him slowly, voice weak. Sir, we have fully exited human jurisdiction. Their ships are no longer detecting us. Zarlok nodded, though the gesture felt heavy. Plot course to Dravik Prime, he said quietly. Full speed. The navigator worked quickly, trying to hide how his hands trembled. Course set, he replied. Zarlok nodded again. Then he added, activate internal recording. Everything from this moment forward must become evidence. The ship's AI beeped. Recording active. Zarlok stepped forward. The entire crew watched as he inhaled deeply, preparing himself for a truth no Dravik commander had ever been forced to deliver. This is Commander Zarlok of the 7th Dravik Fleet, he began, his voice steady but his heart shaking. We have crossed into human space against their warnings. We have seen things no empire in the galaxy has witnessed. What we encountered, he paused, swallowing hard, was not a civilization hiding in fear, but a species carrying the weight of a war so ancient, so devastating, that they sealed themselves away to protect the rest of us. The officers lowered their heads, some biting back tears, others looking numb. Zarlok continued. Humans are not weak. They are not silent because they fear us. No. They are silent because silence is the only thing keeping the relics asleep. One officer whispered, Sir, will the Emperor believe us? Zarlok turned slowly, eyes burning with truth. He will have no choice. The ship sensors beeped suddenly, interrupting the recording. Everyone stiffened. Zarlok spun toward the screen. Are they following us? The sensor officer frowned. No, nothing behind us. But, he hesitated, fear creeping into his voice. Something is ahead. Zarlok tensed. Ahead. In Dravik territory. The officer nodded. It's small. Very small. And a human. A chill swept through the entire deck. Put it on screen, Zarlok ordered. The main display flickered, then showed a tiny, sleek drone-like object floating calmly in the path of their ship. No weapons. No threats. Just a silent, metallic sphere glowing softly. The communications officer whispered, "It's sending a message on a public channel." "Play it," Zarlok said. The sphere pulsed once, and a soft, calm human voice filled the room. Not the cold voice from earlier. Not the ancient one either. This voice sounded young. Almost gentle. "Dravik vessel, we send you one final directive from human command." The crew leaned closer, hearts pounding. The voice continued, "What you saw must be understood and protected." The drone pulsed again. "If your empire acts with aggression, arrogance, or curiosity toward human space again, we will intervene." The softness in the voice shifted into something sharp, not angry, but firm. "Not to destroy you." A pause that made every spine shiver. "But to protect you." Another pulse. "Because what lies within our borders does not care who you are." Zarlok exhaled sharply, pain and realization mixing in his heart. The drone's voice grew quieter. "Tell your emperor this, humanity stands watch so others can sleep." The drone dimmed. "Do not wake what we have buried." And just like that, it vanished, disappearing into a streak of faint blue light that faded into the stars. The crew sat in stunned silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Zarlok finally turned to the recording device. "End transmission," he whispered. The AI clicked. Recording saved. Zarlok lowered himself into the command chair slowly, as though gravity itself had doubled. "Send it directly to the Emperor," he ordered. "Mark it as urgent." The communications officer typed rapidly. "Message sent, encoding locked, Emperor notified." Zarlok closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion pull at every part of him. But before he could rest, the youngest officer spoke again, softly this time. "Sir, what if the Emperor does not listen?" Zarlok opened his eyes. They were colder than space. "Then the Dravik Empire will fall." The officers trembled. "And humanity," one whispered. Zarlok shook his head slowly. "Humanity will not attack us." He looked back at the place where human space had once been visible. "But if we make the wrong move, the relics will." His final words fell with the weight of prophecy. "And humanity will not be able to save us." A deep, emotional silence filled the command deck. They were leaving human space behind forever, yet somehow, every soul aboard knew that this journey had changed them in ways they could never undo. They had seen humanity's burden. They had touched the edge of a nightmare. And they understood the one truth humanity had fought centuries to protect: some threats should never wake. Some wars should never return. And some borders were not meant to be crossed. As the Dravik battleship sped toward home, a single thought echoed through Zarlok's mind, through every mind aboard that ship: the galaxy owes its peace to the silence of humanity. And may that silence never break.